Hello everybody, we continue our series on cognitive biases explaining our chess mistakes. Today we are talking about sunk cost fallacy. What does it mean? It basically means you're basing your decisions based on your past and already committed investments rather than analyzing the current situation objectively. It means not admitting the mistake, right? Because you made some mistakes in the past, the project is failing, but you justify it because of your past investments. You put more money in the project, right? You put more resources in the project, not because it's the best thing to do right now, it's actually not productive, but because you already invested so much resources, you are justifying this to yourself as it's worth putting more resources, right? But it's irrational behavior. It's a cognitive bias. It's not admitting a mistake. For example, here in this position, white went knight a4, hit the queen, and after queen a5 check, you tell me, you stop the video and tell me what the best move is for white. Yes, the best move is simply to admit the mistake and go back knight c3. But as you can understand, as a human, it's a difficult thing, right, for us to admit that we made a mistake and to immediately accept it and fix the problem. In the actual game, white player went c3, and you tell me which move he allowed black to make. Yes, b5, and the knight is trapped on a4. It's a perfect illustration of sunk cost fallacy, guys. I will show you one more example of a sunk cost fallacy. In this position, white went bishop b5 check. Not the best move. And after knight c6, he goes knight f3. This, and after a6, we come to a critical moment. You tell me what the best move is for white in this position. If you take a step back, if you look at this position objectively, I think you would find that bishop d3 is a great move because this bishop clearly belongs on this diagonal in this French pawn structure. But since white has already moved the bishop from f1 to b5, he told me, he's actually one of my students, he told me after the game that he didn't want to admit the mistake because this would be sort of admitting a mistake, right? Because hey, if this square was the best for the bishop, you could have played it before, right? Before bishop b5. But because he didn't want to admit the mistake, because he already invested on the idea of bishop b5, in the actual game, he played bishop a4, and after b5, this bishop found himself on this terrible diagonal, right? Because there's nothing going on that diagonal. This bishop is shooting on the wall of pawns, basically. So psychological root cause of the mistake was, as he told me after the game, that this move would be basically sort of admitting an error, and thus he refused to play this move. Although, if I gave you this position objectively, if you have no interest, if you have no knowledge about the past, I think you would tell me that this bishop is definitely better on d3 than on b3 in this pawn structure, right? Yeah. So, sunk cost fallacy manifests itself, as you can imagine, in several domains in life. In politics, in relationships, in marriage, right? People, of course, invest on different things, ideas, projects, relationships. And sometimes it's no longer productive to cling on to those projects, right? Because they're sort of failing and future investments is not worth it. So you have to know when to cut on future losses, admit the mistake, and make the rational behavior on the current situation. Chess is a perfect example because in every single move, you have to regain the objectivity and you have to analyze the position as objective as possible. In this position, folks, my student went rook e5. What's the point? Well, he wants to go g4 and trapped the white queen, right? White sees it, of course. White went knight g4. After takes. Suddenly, the black rook found himself on a very strange post on e5. But my student refused to fix the mistake, admit the mistake, and this rook on e5 became a huge burden for him for the rest of the game. In fact, that was the root cause of his loss in this game. For example, here, the best move for black is to go rook e8 and create that square for knight, right? Instead, he goes knight h4 in the actual game. After g3 just comes back. And after knight b5, what's the best move? Can you please tell me what the best move is for black? Yes, the best move is still admit the mistake and go rook e8 and generate this beautiful square for the knight. He doesn't do it. He kicks the knight. Then the knight improves. Suddenly knight f5s are coming, knight f3s are coming. And then he goes crazy. Knight e7. Well, because this allows knight f3 and he's losing an exchange. And in fact, he just lost the game like in 2 moves. You see, the rook never moved from e5. The rook e5 move was based on a cheap trick, on a single move, g4 trapping the queen. But the moment your opponent sees it, right, your past investments are no longer productive because your opponent stopped your idea, right? So you have to regain your objectivity, look at the position again with a fresh eye, and you see that this investment is no longer valuable, this idea of rook e5. So you have to take a step back and look objectively and fix the problem. I want to finish today's episode with my own game that I fell for the sunk cost fallacy. I was playing against an international master in a classical game with the black pieces. In this position, I have an extra pawn, but right now I cannot take the bishop because my rook on e4 will be hanging, okay? But I thought I'm smart enough that I found the resource bishop c3. It looks like black is winning material. I got excited and I played this move without much thinking. And after 5 seconds, my strong opponent replied, can you see it? Knight d5. Cold shower, right? Because basically, if the bishop takes either of the rooks, then knight f6 will fork the king and queen, and white is winning. So you can imagine my shock when I witnessed this response. But because I already invested on bishop c3, I refused to accept the mistake and go back bishop g7. I tried to search deeper, I tried to justify the move bishop c3, and after long thinking, I came up with the move queen e5. Now, this is not a blunder, it's actually the third best move in the position, but simply admitting the mistake and bishop g7 move would be practically better for me, because here, white simply took my strong bishop, and my pin problem remained. Rook b7 is coming, my king is weak. Right now, this became much more, let's say, difficult to play with black. You see, there's pressure here, the knight is pinned, there's pressure here, I cannot take the bishop, this rook is under fire. So this became a much more difficult position. In fact, I lost this game within a few moves because things are collapsing, this is hanging, right? I found myself in a very troublesome position because I did not accept the mistake after bishop c3. So going back to this position, we are humans. We make mistakes, right? We cannot avoid them. But just because we made a mistake, it's never too late for us, right? To accept it and look at it objectively and try to admit the mistake and fix it without having to justify our past investments that, oh, I have to act like a smart person, I saw everything from afar, right? Because you can always justify stuff. Post-talk to yourself. Because I have to be honest with you, I didn't see knight d5 in the actual game, right? But, you know, sometimes this behavior kicks in, oh, you don't want to show any weaknesses, you have to justify stuff, and, well, I was maybe acting too smart for my own good in this position. So, the bottom line of this episode, folks, is that chess is a game that always requires objectivity, sort of forgetting about the past, right? Because past moves is already taken place. What is the most important in chess is the current decision, right? And what that decision will bring into the future, basically. So we have to have this mindset of always stay as objective as possible without those emotional triggers, because that's also a big problem here, right? Emotional attachment to your past moves are actually the root cause of this bias. Right? We come up with a move, we love the idea. Oh, look at my beautiful bishop c3 idea. I love that move. I don't want to admit the mistake, right? I will try to base my future decisions on this idea that I personally fell in love with, right? So we have to let go our ego and be as, realistic and as objective as possible at all times. I hope this episode was useful. Please let me know what you think. Do you have similar issues in your games? Does this episode speak to you personally? And if you like this episode, please give me a like and subscribe so we can reach more people. And I will definitely bring more of these examples, cognitive biases that are behind our chess mistakes. I'm here to support you in your chess journey and to make you a better player, folks. Thank you so much.